Scream queens are defined as actresses who play prominent and influential roles in horror films, with their characters often being compelling, memorable women who rise against and conquer their conflicts. Scream queens transcend their characters in a very particular way, however, as their captivating performances turn them into cultural icons for their roles. Mia Goth is no stranger to this label. In my previous video about her, I covered the interesting and diverse filmography she's built over the past decade, and she's been a notable scream queen for quite some time now. Maxine Minx, however, the titular hero of Maxine and arguably Mia Goth's most famous breakout role from X, is not quite there yet at the beginning of Maxine, and she too aims to become a scream queen just like the icon who plays her. Maxine follows Maxine Minx, the sole survivor of X's horrific farmhouse massacre, which had taken place 6 years prior to the events of this film. Maxine is now a successful adult film star, having leveraged her unrelenting passion to build her career over the past 6 years, which consequently leads to the successful audition for the lead role in a new horror film titled The Puritan 2. This is Maxine's big break. If she nails this, she's a Hollywood star just like she's always dreamed of. Maxine's road to stardom, however, is paved with obstacles. The traumatic events of X still haunt her, and the Night Stalker remains an active serial killer in 1985 Los Angeles, and people close to Maxine start disappearing. Everywhere Maxine goes, it feels like something or someone is trying to stop her from reaching her dreams. Protesters, a dodgy private investigator, and a mysterious man in black are only just a few of the barriers in her way. And as Elizabeth Debicki's character Elizabeth Bender puts it, whatever's going on in Maxine's life that's interfering with the Puritan 2's success, Maxine needs to squash it immediately. And without delving too deep into spoilers, Maxine is the same scrappy, unrelenting, passionate, and confident woman that she was in X. This time, with a lot more experience and a world she deserves more than anything. I suppose the sleaziness of 1980s Hollywood isn't necessarily a desirable setting for most, but it's the setting Maxine wants and needs, and it's a world that gives this film its engrossing style and vibe. The dirty and raunchy streets are juxtaposed with vibrant neon lights. The soundtrack is characterized by infectious synth-pop and rock tunes, and vice lurks around every corner like a 2 a.m. drunken visit to the seediest street corner in Las Vegas. Maxine is caked in an atmosphere of sin, debauchery, and nostalgic trashiness only 1980s Hollywood could reproduce, and I absolutely love it. Retro newscasts, VHS tapes, recordings shot by amateurs. It's such a perfect recipe for an uncomfortably alluring horror style that's actually quite popular today. Analog horror aesthetics are super in right now. And by this, I mean vintage VHS vibes like Late Night with the Devil and The Backrooms. Maxine, just like the preceding films in the X trilogy, is a love letter to a very specific Hollywood era. X was a tribute to sexploitation and slasher films. Pearl was a tribute to Hollywood's Technicolor era. And Maxine, likewise, is a tribute to the seductive, grimy, and dark underbellies of 1980s Hollywood. It pays homage to the giallo and slasher genres that influenced it, mixing murder mystery, sexploitation, and slasher elements into a fun concoction of over-the-top, sometimes campy terror that gives it exactly its 80s horror film vibe. Its silliness comes in just the right frequencies, but its violence, however, remains consistent. At its very core, Maxine is a violent film with harsh gore sequences, so much so that it's even grounded in a violent cultural touchstone. the mid-1980s killing spree perpetrated by Richard Ramirez, also known as the Night Stalker. Cultural touchstones can draw you into a specific time, place, and feeling. And the Night Stalker's inclusion accomplishes that by coating the film with a layer of anxiety, paranoia, and terror. But that's not the cultural touchstone I'm here to talk about today. MaXXXine aims to create its own cultural touchstone, one that asks the question, where were you when Maxine Minx became a star? Placing Mia Goth's Maxine Minx into a socially turbulent time period with a lot of cultural conflict is a deliberate and significant aspect of the film that serves as the foundation to her journey into becoming a scream queen. As we've already discussed, 1980s Hollywood was a sleazy and grimy time and place. But saying that doesn't really paint an accurate enough picture of the social decadence and moral conflict that consumed the era. The 1980s were characterized by social panic, all of which is directly referenced in this film. To start with, from roughly the period of the 1960s to the 1970s, there was a cascade of societal and cultural shifts in attitude towards sex and sexuality, with echoes of these shifts trickling into the 1980s. I should preface this section of the video with a warning, however. This period of time was far more complex than I'm going to portray it as, and the short and MaXXXine-focused nature of this video unfortunately calls for a rather reductive and incomplete look into the social and political climate of this time period. So when we talk about the social panic of this era, one of the most important sources of panic that's relevant to MaXXXine was the cultural response to the sexual revolution of the 1960s to the 1970s, a social movement that had focused on sexual liberation and had also coincided with second-wave feminism. Both the sexual revolution and second-wave feminism played a part in redefining sex and sexuality as not just a means to satisfy and serve men, but also the freedom to be who you are outside of traditional heteronormative contexts in which the male experience was the sole focus. To put it more simply, the sexual revolution didn't ask for much. All people wanted was to not be demonized for having a choice. Choosing your partner, choosing pleasure, choosing whether or not you had children. But, of course, demonized these folks still were, and quite frankly, still are. So why is it then do I mention the proliferation of adult-oriented media in this era and the social struggle to accept sex positivity? That's because Maxine Minx is at the heart of the sexual revolution, a figure who in X very much believed in sexual liberation, so much so that she sought to make an artistic adult film and later made a serious career out of sex and sexuality. She herself outlines this exact moral conflict in X.
How can you love someone and still be with other people?
You think we don't have no morals or something? Is that it?
No, I just...
Take it from me. Letting outdated traditions control how you live your life will get you nowhere. I don't know about you, but I got better places to be than where I came from.
Amen to that.
Besides, it's just sex. You can decide who you want to love, but not who you want to screw. Attraction is out of our control. It ain't healthy keeping those feelings locked away inside.
Maxine points out the judgmental tone in Lorraine's line of questioning and accuses Lorraine of thinking lesser of her, that she must have no morals because of her lifestyle. Issues of sex and sexuality was just one part of the cultural clashes of this era, and it serves as a core component to defining Maxine's character and how people see her. In the 1980s, people resisted against this laissez-faire sexual freedom. Even the feminist movement became highly polarized, with groups dividing into anti-erotic and sex-positive camps, where a greater pattern about society emerged. Fear of moral decay. People don't take Maxine seriously. It's only now, ironically, with The Puritan 2 where she gets a chance to become a star. The very title of The Puritan 2 is a dig at this fear of sexuality, with Puritanism being the symbol for historically anti-sex, anti-pleasure, censorious beliefs. Maxine, and other women just like her, is characterized by her father and other evangelicals as a sinner lured by Satan himself. Because what else are you if you're a confident woman who's open to pleasure? Prejudice and oppression are impossible to erase. Certain social groups will always find a way to incite social panic against other groups or individuals that don't align with their belief systems. And that's something Maxine has had to face her whole life. Maxine's father, a televangelist more interested in fame than faith, spends his time in X stoking the fires of social panic, fear-mongering to his congregation about his daughter, calling her a deviant lured into a life of sin. Even Pearl calls Maxine a deviant. So when Maxine shows up to the audition for The Puritan 2, it's not a surprise that the producers and casting directors scoff at her for her background and experience. But as I said before, the conflict surrounding sex positivity was just one part of the cultural clashes of this era. And the concept of moral decay has dipped into the other roots of Maxine's life too. When we talk about social panic, the most historically significant moral panic of this era was none other than the Satanic Panic of the 1980s. Unsubstantiated conspiracies were rife in the United States, with claims that occult rituals, abuse, and devil worship was taking over American society.
The reason they are bothered is because they believe the game has been involved in a number of murders and suicides across the United States and now in Canada. At the trial of a 14-year-old boy who admitted to strangling a young Orangeville, Ontario girl and her brother, it was revealed the accused had been playing the game for 18 months, had in fact been a dungeon master of his own group for 5 months.
Of course, the Satanic Panic, just like most other moral panics in history, was always just a scapegoat for society's deeper problems, and it only gave people an excuse to target others who disagreed with their personal belief systems, whether that's religiously, culturally, ethnically, or even sexually. Maxine's father was very much a believer in the Satanic Panic of this era, with him blaming Maxine's sexual liberation on the devil and the occult. And because the Satanic Panic was so focused on horrific violence and abuse, horror as a genre became a target from certain social groups that believed that horror was playing a part in shaping a morally corrupt American society. Horror was seen as evil, with one of the most famous controversies of this time being the backlash against 1984's Christmas slasher film, Silent Night, Deadly Night. Families and religious fundamentalists across the country lined up to protest the film's depiction of Santa Claus, claiming that the film's ads traumatized their children, which led to the film's ads and the film itself being pulled from the market. The Puritan 2, likewise, experiences this same backlash in Maxine, with protesters showing up to the studio lot where The Puritan 2 is being filmed. At the actual Hollywood premiere for Maxine, there was even a staged protest held to protest the film, a reminder of Maxine's deliberate depiction of moral panic. This is an obstacle to Maxine's stardom, but it isn't just unsubstantiated fear that threatens Maxine's road to success. She has to deal with a very real moral decay and actual panic that surrounds her. The Night Stalker, Maxine's copycat killer, they're both agents of fear that cause her and the society around her to be in a perpetual state of unease. And although Maxine Minx is no stranger to the dark underbellies of otherwise superficially glamorous spaces, herself partaking in drug abuse, participating in quote-unquote sinful spaces like peep shows and nightclubs, employing an agent with questionable ethics, and being a killer herself, the question is whether or not she can rise above all those things. We've been following Maxine's journey for a while now, and it's one that's even mirrored by Pearl's journey. It's an intergenerational quest to become a star, and Maxine's opening scene reminds us of that. The opening scene depicts Maxine as a child, dancing and practicing a performance so she can be a star one day, showing that this dream has been a part of her since her youth. This is Maxine's American dream. This was Pearl's American dream. And it's a dream that'll feel all the more cathartic and rewarding to see Maxine achieve, knowing how much hard work and dedication it took to get her there. Because Maxine becoming a star means more than just success for our hero. Maxine's success represents a dream that took ample groundwork, endless sacrifices, and fierce determination to achieve. An achievement that only generations of hard work could accomplish. The repression and oppression that women fought so hard to resist in this time period and to this day is Maxine Minx's battle. A battle that resonates with us all, and a battle that makes her the scream queen we all wanted. Maxine Minx is the perfect character to put in this position of vulnerability, terror, and cultural conflict. Her fearlessness, supreme confidence, and commitment to greatness puts her in a position where she can rise above her status, where she can rise above the obstacles that hold her back. How people perceive her and how her trauma affects her matters less when she believes in herself more than anything. Her mantra speaks volumes. She will not accept a life she does not deserve, and she absolutely means it. Nothing will stop Maxine, and that's what shapes her into this icon and superhero we look up to. Because if we are only more like Maxine, we too can bulldoze through any obstacle in our path. Maxine is easy to root for. She's an underdog with a host of traumatic experiences and a world that doesn't believe in her like she does herself. She's relatable in every sense of the word. So when Maxine goes out of her way to confront each and every one of her obstacles in this movie, from the anti-sex, anti-horror social groups, to the dangerous private investigator who stalks her daily, and all the way to the copycat Night Stalker killer, we feel just how powerful Maxine's aura is. When she ultimately succeeds in becoming a star, her transformation into a scream queen is complete. And that's what she does in this film. By confronting and breaking down every obstacle that holds her back. By virtue of overcoming sexual stigma. By virtue of castrating the violence of men perpetrated upon women. By virtue of believing in herself, Maxine becomes a non-traditional feminist trailblazer, a cultural icon, and a pinnacle of hard work and the American dream. Maxine Minx embodies what it means to transcend and defeat the horrors of our everyday lives, and it makes her one of my favorite horror heroines of all time. Maxine isn't the way she is because she can ignore obstacles. It's because she can confront them and rise above them. Despite her confidence, she's still haunted by trauma and anxiety. But she succeeds in spite of that, and the characters in the film recognize that from Maxine. At the end of the film, the world knows that Maxine is a star, and you can feel her charisma ooze through the screen just like you can with Mia Goth. And I think the ending sequence of the film, in conjunction with Maxine Minx's long journey, is a bit of a meta commentary on Mia Goth's own success. Mia Goth herself is a horror icon and a magnetic tour de force, which in turn makes Maxine Minx into the character she is. Maxine's performance is Mia Goth's performance, that much is obvious. But more specifically, Mia's extreme talent for passionate, emotional explosions is what draws people to her performances in the first place. She's intense without being exaggerated. She's passionate without seeming silly. and she's fun without lacking substance. That's who Mia Goth is, and that's who Maxine Minx is. Maxine is very much a mirror to the actress who plays her. Maxine even mentions things that are reminiscent of Mia's career. For example, she makes a comparison to Brooke Shields, in which Brooke Shields was naked in a film in her early career, and that Brooke Shields will now be starring in a Muppet movie despite that. Mia Goth's first film was Nymphomaniac, in which she was indeed nude for a portion of that film as well, and now Mia Goth is going to be in a Marvel film despite that. Maxine also mentions that horror will lead her into stardom just like it has for other actors' careers, which was very much true for Mia Goth when X propelled her into absolute scream queen status. The parallels between Maxine and Mia seem like a deliberate tribute to Mia Goth, and Maxine becoming a star feels quite pertinent, relevant, and true to who Mia is and her image as an actress. Hell, the premiere for Maxine even took place at the TCL Chinese Theater, the very place where Maxine Minx imagines herself becoming a star at. The parallels can't get any closer than that. So maybe it isn't that Maxine Minx became a scream queen on her own. In a way, both Mia Goth and Maxine Minx worked together to make that a reality. Mia for Maxine, and Maxine for Mia. And I find that to be a beautiful symbiosis of what it means to create art. It's something we put our heart and soul into, and as we shape it, it shapes us back. And that goes for consuming art too. Like those who make it, the art we engage with, the art we care about, it shapes us just as much as we shape it. And although Maxine never shaped me into a scream queen just like it did with Maxine and Mia, Maxine nevertheless means enough to me to have changed who I am as a person, just like with all art I love. If you're no stranger to this YouTube channel, then you know the most important thing about art to me is what it makes me feel. And what X, Pearl, and Maxine have made me feel is an overwhelming sense of belief. Belief in myself, belief in who I am, and what it takes to get to where I want to be in my life. I believe in Maxine's mantra. I believe in fighting for a life better than the one I have now. I believe in fighting to be a part of a world I've always wanted to be a part of, just like Maxine, and just like Mia. That's why it was very special for me to have gotten the opportunity to attend the Maxine premiere myself. I wasn't there as a star, but as someone who needed the reminder that I should advocate for myself, to believe in my ambitions, to trust in myself, to fight for a life I think I deserve. And though it was only luck that brought me there that day, it'll be Maxine's relentless attitude that'll bring me to anywhere I want to be in my life someday. And if that doesn't make Maxine Minx a scream queen, I don't know what does. But if you're anything like me, then Maxine's journey should ring true. And as we try to craft a better life for ourselves, I suppose there's only one thing we need to remember. We should not accept a life we do not deserve. If you enjoyed this video essay, don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content similar to this. I make videos about all things writing related. I'd also like to thank my patron, Edith Lopez Torres, for helping make this video happen. If you'd like to support me further, please check out my Patreon. I'll leave a link down in the description below. And if you've got some time, check out some of my other videos too. I really appreciate you watching this one. And to everyone who made it to the end here, thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.